Listen to this podcast now on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Why is the middle class shrinking? Why are people facing an affordability crisis while marginalized individuals called informals grow in numbers? Join me as I travel the world, speaking with people living in invisibility, the leaders working to solve it, and uncovering the hard truths shaping our economy and daily reality.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, officially the search is still on for that missing airman who was on the F-15E jet fighter, the U.S. jet fighter that went down in Iran. Now, we had some reports earlier tonight from Blaine Holt that two of his sources were saying that individual may have been located. It's not clear at this point what the latest is, but it sure seems officially that crew member is still missing at this point. And there are so many details tonight. First off, here is Peter Doocy on Fox News, of course, the White House correspondent there. And this is what he had to say about his conversation with President Trump. And he says President Trump will not hold back if something happens to this missing airman.
Most recently, the latest thing we have is that President Trump just said he's not ready to announce what the United States is going to do if it turns out that Iran harms this missing U.S. crew member. That is according to an interview he just gave with The Independent. A U.S. Marine posted outside the West Wing for most of the day Friday because inside, the president's national security team has been regularly briefing him about the F-15E crew rescue mission. After the F-15E shoot-down became public, the president's first comment on Truth Social was, "Keep the oil, anyone?"
Keep the oil, anyone. It clipped a little bit there, but that was the message. Keep the oil, anyone. And the word is that President Trump is telling everybody at the White House the mission stays the same. They're, of course, hoping that all of the crew come home safely. Right now, it is that one that at least officially is still missing. And this F-15E jet fighter went in to Iran. Again, it encountered some sort of enemy fire. It's unclear what took it down at this point. Was it a rocket? What was it? But it went down, and apparently there are reports that two ejection seats, that both of them ejected safely, at least one of the ejection seats with a whole bunch of parachute next to it has been found. So there's a lot of questions tonight. Where is the other one? And then we know that when an A-10 Warthog went in, that is a massive plane that went in to try to retrieve the missing pilots, the ones who went down on the F-15. Well, then the Warthog came under heavy fire. The Warthog was able to get out of airspace there tied to Iran and make on its way to Kuwait. And it did crash, and the pilot ejected. So thank goodness the pilot's okay. But that plane did crash, but luckily they were able to fly into friendly airspace. And then two helicopters went in to try to save the downed pilot and also the other weapons system operator. They call him Wizzy, the weapons system operator that was on that F-15. There's one pilot and there's one Wizzy. And the Wizzy is the one who's supposedly missing at this time, this weapons system operator. So then these two helicopters go in, and then they came under heavy fire. Apparently, some of the people on the choppers sustained minor injuries, but the good news is they're okay. But it sure sounds like things were quite contentious on the ground there in Iran, and it's unclear what they were shooting with, but they were at least making some shots, and that's not a good thing for the U.S. military, because even a bunch of ragtag soldiers can get lucky once in a while. And that may have been the case with this F-15 for the Iranians. Not good news for the U.S., but good news for the Iranians. And let's not forget, there have been 13,000 sorties, 13,000 flights. I mean, that is a big, big deal. So there's been so many flights without incident. This is the first that we know of that went down in enemy territory in this campaign. So I would say the odds are very, very good in America's favor. And President Trump, when he was asked by a reporter, well, what do you think about all this? Will this change your strategy? He said, no, heck no, it will not change our strategy. I'm still demanding that Iran come to the table. And he also said, war isn't pretty. War is war. We will stay the course. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show. And here is Staff Sergeant David Bellavia. He is a former military guy for many years, and David is a Medal of Honor recipient. So take a listen to what he said about what will happen now after this downing of this U.S. F-15.
Right. David, I do believe it's been about 15 hours since this aircraft was downed. Knowing that, and we're in the midst of this survival mission, what does that tell you? Do you take that as a sign of encouragement or discouragement that we're 15 hours into this, and to the extent that we know right now, he still is somewhere out there in Iran?
I think it's encouraging because, first of all, if you engage combat search and rescue, I guarantee you don't live to tell the story. These are Tier 1 operators. We goof around in Garrison about the difference between the combat arms branches, Air Force, everything else. Tier 1 is Tier 1. These are the best of the best. They're going to have air support, orbital support. They're going to have ground support. We talked about the Marines and the 82nd Airborne that are positioned. Well, there's a lot of other special forces that are out there as well that we don't really talk about. Those will all be activated. If there is any plan to cordon an area where they think this is where they last saw the pilot, they're going to send every single operator in that area. We heard about how they were engaged when they got the other pilot, the other individual in that F-15. They're going to shoot back and they're going to shoot to kill. And if we're still looking, that's a good sign, because that means that we have an idea of the vicinity of where these guys are. Look, this is a simple mission to isolate where this plane went down. It's also very complicated because of the terrain and the enemy disposition. But I mean, I'm watching all of the people out there that are trying to send the message that this is somehow chaos and that we're losing control of the fight and all this nonsense. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. 30,000 sorties. Do you know how many planes got hit and didn't crash? I mean, this is an incredible display of military power, the best of the best right now in the world. And we had a bad day, but we're going to fix that problem, and we're going to fight like hell to bring these two, the remaining pilots home.
Yeah, David, I haven't seen that. That must be bouncing around on social media, but I think your point is very well taken. You've made the point today. It's the nature of war. And so far.
And if you hit the hair of one of those pilots, that's it. You can imagine what President Trump would do if something happens to that weapons system operator or any other American that should potentially fall there in Iran. Here's President Trump. Let's not forget, a couple days ago in the address to the nation, he said, if you don't come to the table, Iran, you're going to a pile of rubble, to the Stone Age.
I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We are going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death. They're all dead. The new group.
The new group. And you heard what he said. We will bomb them into the Stone Age. That's all that they will have. They will have a pile of dust. He even hit the biggest bridge in Iran not that long ago. It turns out also, guess what was going on near the biggest bridge in Iran? Underneath the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps was meeting underneath, hanging out, hiding like a bunch of cowards under civilian targets. And you know they were doing it just like Hamas. Remember, Hamas was hiding their little tunnels, their big tunnels, underneath the hospitals, underneath schools. So what does that say? 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Bob in Yonkers on line 4. Go ahead, Bob. Your thoughts tonight.
Thank you for taking the call, Rita. President Trump should send these savages a message that if they harm this airman, hell will rain down on them.
I agree. By the way, I 100% agree. Look, hopefully they get this airman ASAP. And the word is that ceasefire talks are not going anywhere. There's a couple different reports tonight that they're not doing anything. You heard what they said. They have a bounty on the head of this missing airman. That Iran State TV is saying, hey, people of Iran, if you hand this person in, if you find this airman, we'll give you $75,000, which is a lot of money in Iranian money. It's a lot of money in any money. But they would love to have this airman for propaganda, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing. But listen, Trump is not fooling around, Bob. You hit it on the head. He means business. And when I hear what you're saying about he should rain down on the Iranians, what do you think? What kind of target should he go for?
Anything that the airman can find, take it out now. Don't waste time. These people can't be trusted.
No, you can't trust anything with these people. I 100% agree. Bob, thank you very much. Let's go to Eduardo in Tampa, Florida. Go ahead, Eduardo, line 2.
Yeah, good evening, Rita. The media is not having a good day. We had good job numbers. We had some hospice arrests in California. I'm glad this media wasn't around during World War II. Carg Island should be bullseye number 1 if they touch this airman.
I contend that Carg Island should be target number 1 regardless, Eduardo. I mean, they cut this regime off at the knees. I mean, regardless of what has happened today, if they don't seem to be acquiescing, they don't seem to be agreeing to anything. They keep coming out and saying, "Oh, we're not an aggressive a country at all." Yet they're hitting, kindergartens and they're hitting hotels. They're hitting their area of neighbors. Imagine if these people had access to a nuclear weapon. Imagine what they would do, Eduardo. Right?
Yeah, the son of Khomeini is unacceptable. He's an unacceptable leader. We need to have an alternative to that.
Yeah, and you know what? Trump was saying this week, Eduardo, that he sort of signaled that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, that there might be some in there. There might be some with this, Speaker of the Parliament. I'm really leery, Eduardo. I mean, it would be wonderful if they would, but they're not Venezuela. Venezuela,
no kidding, right.
You got, Delcy Rodriguez. And she actually, she seems to be so far working out okay and cooperating because she knows if she doesn't, she's gone. These people are fanatic. It's a different breed with Iran, right?
Yeah. We definitely need. I know there was somebody. I think they were somewhere in the States or somewhere in Europe. I forgot the guy's name, but I knew he was a male, and I think he seems like a pretty reasonable guy. Hopefully, that's somebody who will be able to get in there once things, settle down.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Reza Pahlavi, and he is the crown prince. He's the Shah's son who's been living in the States and London and Paris. And he said he is ready to return when the time is right. And he seems like you just said, he seems like somebody who is ready to lead, ready to have even a business relationship with America. I mean, there's just so many different things. The problem is it could be hopefully not a long time, but it's going to be a very difficult, hard-hitting time for Iran before someone like him can come in, because you can't just plop someone in like that when they still obviously have a lot of weapons. They still have some fight in them, and they still have a lot of belligerence and defiance in them. So you can't, drop him in, or you can't ask the people to rise up right now if they're not ready, if they're not fully equipped, if it isn't a fair fight for the people, in other words, if they can't, conquer and they just get slaughtered, that would be horrific. So timing's everything. And that's why the next 2 or 3 weeks, that's why President Trump came out and said, if they're not ready yet, it's going to take a little bit more time. And it certainly will. But maybe it might be 2 to 3 weeks. Let's hope he's right. I have a feeling Trump is not going to let Monday's deadline go through. He may do something beforehand, or he might do something as soon as that deadline hits on Monday. Eduardo, thank you very, very much. 1-800-848-9222. We'll continue with your calls, everybody, after the break. You're listening to The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show.
Well, Trump is certainly going to get mean against Iran if indeed it turns out that they take this missing airman into captivity. We don't know if that's going to happen. Let's pray that that doesn't, because, of course, the pilot of that F-15E, he was rescued. Again, Blaine Holt, who we talked to earlier, Brigadier General, said his sources were saying that the second one was taken out, or maybe they had located but hadn't retrieve that individual. We'll find out. That would be terrific news if indeed that's the case. But certainly raises the stakes to everybody. And also, it gives us all such a deep appreciation for our great men and women who are fighting for freedom and fighting for Iran's freedom. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Sandra in New Jersey. Go ahead, Sandra. Your thoughts tonight.
Oh, Rita, hi. I'm so grateful for our military. And I bet you Blaine is telling us, I bet we're going to find this other soldier and we're going to be so grateful and proud. And I'm just realizing, this is such a contrast in how Afghanistan was handled. This is like night and day. And it was poorly handled, and this is being handled so carefully, and every person counts, whereas in the other, situation, people were left behind. Not good. But, I just wanted to say something about Passover. Last night, I learned something new, that you fill the glass to the top with wine. I said, why to the top, And
by the way, that sounds like a lot of my friends in college, but go ahead.
Okay, so they talk about abundance and what we want, and this is what Donald Trump wants for us. He wants us to have everything, prosperity, safety, health. He wants it all for us.
That's a great point, right? Fill it to the top. He also wants freedom for those around the world who deserve it, like the good Iranian people. He's fighting a noble mission.
Let me tell you about ProHealthConnect.com. It's transforming healthcare payments, providing retailers a seamless process for over-the-counter and healthy benefit programs. By connecting retailers, health plans, and payment processors, ProHealth Connect creates one powerful, unified network. They empower independent grocers and pharmacies to accept health benefit cards without changing how they do business. With over 10,000 locations nationwide, helping more than 1.3 million people access the care and nutrition they need. Go to ProHealthConnect.com.
Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Florence Township, New Jersey, where a man who works as a contractor was rescued after suffering a medical emergency while working on top of a water tower there in New Jersey. The 63-year-old contractor was conducting an inspection of the water tower, and around 1 o'clock, he began to experience major chest pain. He was able to call in for help, and crews quickly rushed on the scene. Sky Force 10 was also deployed over the scene and helped direct officers as they safely secured the man to a rescue board and carefully lowered him about 100 feet using rope and pulleys. The man was successfully rescued, removed from the tower, and he was transported to a hospital for further evaluation. What a dramatic rescue. And thanks to our men and women in blue, he was able to get to the hospital literally within minutes. That is extraordinary how they do their work, even at great heights. Well, we are talking, of course, about the biggest story in the world. Everybody's talking about it. We're awaiting word and confirmation from CENTCOM if indeed that second airman is still missing. If they were rescued at this point officially, he is still missing, he or she. We know that apparently, according to reports, 2 of them ejected. There's 2 on that plane, but it is in enemy territory in Iran, and it's apparently really remote, that area, that province. It's in southwestern Iran. And just to give you a little bit of background of that area, it's about 6,000 square miles, and it is about the size of Delaware, if you will. That's sort of been the equivalent that most people are saying. And going in and rescuing someone in what is construed as a very remote area. It's supposed to be pretty barren, dry. There's some mountains alongside it, but that makes it very tough to find somebody. It makes it tough to hide, too, also for his purposes, the airman. But also it is better than if it was an urban, because if it's an urban, there might be a lot of people in the city. You don't know how many people you would encounter. You don't know who's friend. You don't know who's foe. You don't know who's pretending to be a friend, and maybe they're not. On Iranian state TV, they made an announcement saying that if you can locate this airman, you could receive this bounty. You could receive this reward. And the reward equates to about $75,000 US dollars. That's a lot of money, no matter where you're talking, but especially in a place like Iran. So the stakes are high. And of course, everybody prays that the U.S. gets to this missing person much before any Iranian foe does. And also, maybe somebody there also, one of the Iranian groups. There's a lot of groups that are so pro-American also. And maybe it's one of those groups who wants to help this airman and will shelter the airman, help hide the airman until rescue can come in to that particular area. You just don't know what the circumstances are. But boy, the stakes could not be higher because, of course, Iran wants to take that individual and use that person for propaganda. You know what they're going to do. If they get that individual, they're going to parade that person all over Iranian state TV, all over the internet, say, look who we have. They're already going around bragging that they took down that fighter jet. For them, that's a big win. And it is a win for them that a ragtag group could take down a very expensive fighter jet. But remember, we've had, again, 13,000 missions, 13,000 sorties. That's amazing. And so far, only one has gone down in enemy territory. So it's still incredible odds. And the U.S. military is still by far the best of the best. I wanted to play this for you guys because it made me think so much, this case, of what happened with Scott O'Grady. You may remember Scott O'Grady. He was born, by the way, in New York City. He's a former U.S. Air Force fighter pilot. And on June 2nd, 1995, he was shot down over Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it was a mobile surface-to-air missile that caused his plane to get taken down. He was forced to eject from his F-16C, and he was forced to eject and land in hostile territory. The U.S. Marines found him. Search and rescue mission, the Marine Expeditionary Unit eventually rescued him after 6 days where he evaded the Bosnian Serbs. So you can imagine just how tough it was being there behind enemy lines. And I remember I interviewed Scott O'Grady a couple times. He's a real American hero. And he was talking about how he had to, camouflage himself in leaves. And he had to, in that case, also eat bugs. He was eating leaves off the tree bark, doing whatever he could to survive because he didn't know how long it was going to be till he would get rescued. But indeed he did, even after 6 days. So here is veteran Scott O'Grady, in his own words, talking a little bit about what happened to him.
I ended up spending 6 days surviving behind enemy lines. And it was unexpected while I was on a patrolling mission where I was flying with another F-16 in a two-ship formation, where unexpectedly a Soviet surface-to-air missile impacts my aircraft 10 feet behind my seat. My airplane is now exploding around me. I'm being burned before I can eject. I eject over 5 miles above the earth at equivalent airspeed around 500 miles per hour. I have a parachute descent that lasts to nearly half an hour. Before I can even hit the ground, enemy death squads are ready there to kill me. I'm now hunted down in a country where I don't have the right to live. I don't have freedom there. I'm desperately trying to talk to somebody on a radio. Finally, friendly forces hear me. The United States Marines came down their helicopters. They picked me up, but as we're flying out, we're being shot at by Surfstar missiles, anti-aircraft artillery, and small arms fire.
Wow. So as he was being flown out, they were still firing on Scott O'Grady. So, boy, he was surrounded in a death trap, but yet he survived. And here's a little bit more from veteran Scott O'Grady talking about what kept him alive in his darkest hours.
Now, I'm 80 miles into hostile territory, and there are 3 armies fighting around me, and there are no friendlies there. You would have thought I would have felt very lonely, very isolated from the free world, but I didn't. The reason is I was inspired by the team that supported me. And that team goes beyond the military team I'm a part of. Because the team that meant the most to me in my heart was right back here in the United States of America. For I knew that all of you as fellow citizens, you weren't going to forget about me. You weren't going to leave me there. You were going to make sure that I was rescued, and you were going to make sure I came home. And I want you to know I never doubted that. And I don't know how I can explain to you. Thank you. I don't know. I really don't know how I can tell you in words how much that meant to me. Knowing that while I was wearing our nation's uniform, in a war zone, in combat, surviving for my life, that I had the support of all my fellow citizens back home in America, meant everything to me.
That's amazing. That's what kept him alive, knowing that America was hoping he would come back, knowing that America would not forget him, knowing that his fellow men and women in uniform will not forget him. And that's why America is feverishly right now trying to locate this second airman. America does not leave anybody behind. And Scott O'Grady talked about soon after he was shot down, what happened in that country is horrific.
Just to give you one example, a month after I was shot down in the city of what I pronounce Srebrenica, death squads came in, UN peacekeepers fled, and 8,000 plus males dead, dumped into mass graves. The international community actually just saw this devastation to the civilian populace and how evil this was and wanted to promote peace there. And while I was flying there, we enforced a no-fly zone over those skies of Bosnia, preventing any of the warring factions from flying their aircraft overhead so they can't use air superiority and just drop bombs on people.
It's a very dangerous place in the world right now. There are many hot spots, and let's pray for that second airman that we get good news soon from that individual. We were talking earlier today on Katz and Cosby, and we were talking with General John Teichert, who is with the U.S. Air Force and Space Force. He was talking about how a lot of times when pilots eject, when crew members say, okay, we're going to eject, they try to do it simultaneously, but usually it's like a second or two apart, even if it is, quote, simultaneous. So the fact that one was found and we're not clear where that second seat or parachute is, oftentimes it could be miles away just because of how fast those fighter jets are flying. And wind and a whole bunch of other stuff. You might take off at the same time in terms of ejecting out of your plane after it was shot down. But often, sometimes you could be found so far apart. And that is just what happens in war. And that's what happens when you say, okay, we're shot. You train for this. You go through it. You practice evasion. You practice resistance. You're armed. You probably have devices on not just obviously the plane, but also on your hardware, your military hardware, on your person. The question is it working? The question is, what's the physical shape of that other air person? We know the other one obviously survived, but we don't know what kind of condition that person's in. There are, so many questions tonight. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Norm in Brooklyn on line 2. Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, hi, Rita. Yes, the war is going very well. However, it's a war. And I don't know who said it, but war is hell. And, even a war under the best of circumstances, there will be casualties. I mean, the longer we stick with it, chances are Americans are going to die. I mean, this is just the reality. I mean, we lost, 20, 30 people in Grenada, and we were there for 2 weeks or something like that. So, I mean, it's just, and this is a much more complicated operation than something like Grenada. So that's, I'm hoping, praying that this airman is found. However, this is a wounded animal, and it's only been a month, and hopefully we don't have to be there for many years.
Hopefully we don't have to be there for many weeks, right, Norm? By the way, Norm, I'm trying to think of who said war is hell. I believe it was someone in the Civil War. I think it's attributed originally, right? Like General Sherman or someone like that, I think.
Yeah. Well, he made it hell, if you ever read that.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, he knows what hell is.
Yes. The reason why I was originally going to call you, I was wondering if you were going to give me an opening. I'm very upset with the allies, particularly some of our European Union countries, specifically one that I am a citizen of, which is of Austria, and Austria, Italy, several other countries have said that they're not going to allow American they use their bases, and I said, my God, how they forget that there wouldn't be in Austria if it wouldn't have been for America. There wouldn't be probably in Italy either if it wouldn't have been for the Allies.
And guess what? They'd be speaking Russian or German.
German.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they speak German in Austria anyway, but it would be. I mean, Austria was declared after March of '38.
I'm talking about Italy. You brought up Italy. I'm talking about Italy.
Yeah. They would be speaking. Yes, they would be speaking German and eating sauerkraut. Yes, that's what they. That's what they were doing.
Yeah, but you're right. Norm, hold on. You're right, because it really angers me. How so many of these particular allies who, and I'm astounded, actually, I brought up Italy to you when you brought up those two, because Giorgia Meloni has been very close to President Trump. I was at, the inauguration in Washington, D.C., and she was one of the first people that came there to celebrate with President Trump. I mean, she's had a very close relationship. Philosophically, they seem to be on the same page. And yet at this moment, she's folding like a cheap suit. And then Keir Starmer, who acted all big and bad when it came to Ukraine, he's folding like a really cheap suit. He is far from a Winston Churchill. He's more of a Daffy Duck or a Neville Chamberlain. And, and you brought up Austria's folding, Germany's folding. I'm thinking France, Spain, that government is very radical left. But these governments, I don't think the relationship between America and NATO is ever going to be the same, Norm. I really think this has really caused a major bump. And it's also, more than anything, it's shown the world who knows how to step up and who does not know how to step up. It has really shown who can deliver, when the chips are down. And in this particular case, boy, did these people fail big time. And President Trump the other night, he came out when he was doing his speech, and he came out and said, take the Strait of Hormuz, guys, find the courage. He didn't even name them. I thought he actually was quite kinder than I thought he'd be. And he said, the strait's for the taking. We did all the hard work. Now it's pretty easy. Just go in, have the courage to do it. And so far, quote, no one's had the courage to do it. So I think this relationship is going to be a very different one. And I understand the Secretary General, I think, is coming in next week to meet with Trump, sort of an emergency meeting. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall? How do you think that conversation is going to go, Norm? What do you think?
Oh, look, they need to, what, from Europe? The Europeans are not going. The Europeans are not. They're in a situation. They've depended upon us to defend them from the big bear since the end of World War II. Austria isn't even, the country, whatever, that I have citizenship of. They're not even part of NATO. I mean, they don't even everything that we've taken part in Desert Storm, even the Germans, they took part in some of that stuff. Austria doesn't take part in that. And they get their oil from Russia. This is the big thing.
Which is disgusting.
That's what they're.
I'm sorry. I find it disgusting. I find it find it reprehensible. And not necessarily Austria, but some of these other countries have done these backdoor deals. They, on one hand, say, "Oh, they're really upset about Russia, Ukraine, terrible Russia," and then they buy oil from them. I mean, to me, it's reprehensible. Norm, real quick though, wouldn't you love to see the optics? I'm thinking about next week. Will it be like a Zelensky meeting? Remember when Zelensky was there and Trump said, "Oh, no. Remember their first meeting? You don't have the cards. You don't tell us. You don't do this." Obviously, the Secretary General, is different than the individual countries, but clearly is going to be the messenger. I can't wait to see how that meeting goes. I hope it's public, right?
Right. Look, if we pulled out 84,000 troops out of Germany tomorrow, Putin would be like, "Oh, my God, look at the gift they're giving us." I mean, Putin would be there if he knew the Americans were not there, Putin would be in Germany tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He would be celebrating like there is no tomorrow. He would be very happy about that. That's for sure. Norm, really great discussion. And to be continued with you. You always have great points. Everybody will continue more right after the break here on The Rita Cosby Show.
It's The Rita Cosby Show.
And coming up on The Rita Cosby Show, we will have more details about what is still construed as the pilot who is not back in American hands. Also, where does the war in Iran go from here? And by the way, on Monday, Savannah Guthrie is expected to come back to the Today Show. She says she's not sure if she's ready, but she feels it's important to do. She says that's what her mother would want her to do. Also, James Carville taking a swipe at President Trump, now talking about war crimes. Has James Carville lost his mind? Has the Democratic Party lost his mind? We're going to play that clip. Wait till you hear all the F-bombs. There's going to be a lot of bleeping on that one. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Robert in North Carolina. Go, Robert. Go ahead.
Good evening, Rita. The movie is called Bat 21. Gene Hackman starred as a downed ground air support pilot in Vietnam. And that was his call sign, Bat 21.
And it was based on a real life story, too, right, if I recall?
Yes, it was. So there's the answer to John Katz's question earlier.
Yes, that's right, because John was saying, I saw that movie. You're absolutely correct. And in fact, what an important movie. There's also a movie, by the way, also about Scott O'Grady, what he went through. That's amazing that both of them survived.
Sacco and Feliz, New York and New Jersey's premier attorneys at law. Their team brings decades of experience across a wide range of practice areas. Whatever life brings, they're your legal team. From everyday matters to complex cases, they've got you covered with the experience you need and the results you want. Because when life gets complicated, they make it simple. SaccoFeliz.com. SACCOFILLAS.com. 2 C's, 2 L's.